I will call the meeting to order. We will start with roll call. Larry?
Here.
Bren?
Here.
Ashley? Here. Mary?
Here.
Jane? Here. Jeannie?
Here.
Musab?
Here.
Dylan? All right, thank you, everybody. Notice of meeting?
Meeting was properly noticed.
All right, adoption of agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we get to start this evening with our oath of office for our newly elected members.
All right, and Officer Budenhagen's going to administer the oath.
So I'm going to have you repeat after me,
Okay.
okay? Raise your right hand.
I,
State your name.
Ashley Ross,
Who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Yes, raise your right hand, and you're going to repeat after me.
Good.
I
I,
state your name.
Mary Larson,
Who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Hello.
All right, raise your right hand.
I, Larry Dukes,
Who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
who have been duly elected to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
all right. Thank you, Officer Budenhagen. Next, we have our Spotlight in Learning with the Pewaukee High School. Brian, are you starting us out?
So we have an exciting new program here at Pewaukee High School that we just initiated this year, and so we are at the tail end of year one, and we wanted to give you a little bit of an update, and so we've invited some esteemed guests to come and do a presentation this morning, so I'm going to turn it over to them, or this evening. Wow.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Adriana Pluck, the Continuous Improvement Coordinator, and I work closely with the Insight Program, and I'm going to let Ryan Fronda introduce the rest of our guests here tonight.
Hi, everybody. As Adriana said, I'm Ryan Fronda, and we're joined by two students in my aviation class this year. This is Bryce Denzine and Cassidy Davis.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start off.
Go by the microphone,
Oh,
please.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to start off tonight with talking a little bit about what the industry needs are in the aviation program and what the current labor market looks like, because I think whenever we start a new class of this caliber, we want to make sure that it's fitting into the needs of both our student interests as well as what's out there in terms of a career focus moving down the road for them. We'll highlight a little bit about the mentoring that's taking place, talk about the curriculum we're using, and then kind of what's actually happening in the class, and then what are our next steps as we continue to move forward with the program. There we go. So the aviation field as a whole is not just catering towards future pilots of the world, although certainly our future pilots are interested in taking this class. But we have students in this class that are interested in getting involved in the military, that are aspiring aerospace engineers, that want to be air traffic controllers or space science careers. And then we also have this growing population of drones. And drones are taking off quite literally right now, and they are involved in a variety of different careers that go both within and beyond the field of aviation. We know that organizations like Amazon are exploring how drones can be used to expedite their delivery practices. We know that they're being used in real estate and in engineering assessments. Law enforcement and fire protection services use them. The military, and they're also used quite a bit in photojournalism and media. And when we look at our labor market, we know that we are sending students into a field where they will have opportunities to find careers. If you take a look at the diagram, right now they are anticipating within the next couple of years globally a shortage of pilots alone to be about 80,000. In the US, that translates to about 30,000 that they anticipate in the next couple of years being a shortage. And so there's lots of factors that contribute to this. First of all, the FAA is one of the areas where in certain areas of being a pilot, there is a mandated retirement age, which means that once you hit a certain age, you cannot work beyond that legally. There's also a lot of medical requirements that go along with having certain pilot licensure, and if you develop a certain medical condition, or if you are on certain medications, you are not able to fly. These careers have a low risk of automation for the future, and they are financially lucrative. When you are at a deficit of about 80,000 careers globally, those careers will drive high salaries. And there's a huge need not only for pilots, but people who are willing to build those planes and to deploy them as air traffic controllers and all of the other traffic distribution services that go along with such a field. So in terms of the mentoring piece, the students currently right now in our aviation class have a wide variety of mentors that they're working with. And these are all mentors that were matched with them based on what they indicated last spring their area of interest was. These mentors include airline pilots. We currently have pilots from Alaska, American United, and UPS serving as mentors for us. We have photojournalists and drone operators who are mentors for us, including one of our own alum from a couple of years ago. We have a military helicopter pilot. We have 2 different fighter pilots. Those were some of the most challenging mentors to find in 8 years for me. Military intelligence officers, we have space propulsion engineers, aerospace engineers. We have a marine biologist, because one of our students in this class is not interested in pursuing aviation as a career, but she wants to be a marine biologist and is pursuing the use of drones as a way to pad her resume. So the curriculum that we're using for this class is the AOPA's You Can Fly curriculum. The AOPA stands for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. This is a turnkey curriculum that provides all of the different lessons, the material lists, the professional development, the resources, and more. It's been a tremendous resource for us. There are over 400 high schools right now across the U.S. that are using this particular curriculum. We happen to be one of 3 in Wisconsin so far. And we are, the other 2 might only be through after-school clubs and not actually through a course that students are taking for curriculum, or for credit. It's an incredibly hands-on curriculum. You will hear that from Ryan and our students in a few minutes. And one of the other pluses to this is that you do not need to have an aviation background in order to teach the class. So Ryan is certainly well equipped with his background in physics, but not being a pilot himself, that's not limiting us for being able to open this door for our students. The actual curriculum is one that you don't need to deliver in whole. There are 4 different years of the scope and sequence that are provided by AOPA, and you do not need to use all of them. So we really focused in this year on grade 11, and Ryan will talk a little bit about what that looks like momentarily.
Thank you. So, the curriculum starts with semester 1, which is called the Flying Environment, and this kind of has 2 pieces to it. The first piece is the weather, so planes fly in the atmosphere, right? So the weather is hugely on the minds of pilots all the time. And so I think the students were a little tired about hearing about clouds. We had a quiz, they had memorized like 20 different types of clouds, but that stuff is really, really important if you're gonna be flying a plane in that atmosphere all day long. The second part of semester 1 was then that focus on airports, because that's the other place that planes go to a lot. And the airport piece focused on what do the different lights on the runways mean? How do you make your way throughout a taxiway? And also, how do you communicate with air traffic control and with the other pilots? So there's really kind of stringent regulations about how you communicate with each piece there to make sure that nothing goes wrong during that flight. So that was semester 1, and in semester 1, everyone was together in the classroom, doing the same curriculum at the same time. Now we're in semester 2, where we have 2 different pathways. So we have the drone pathway, so students interested in droned or unmanned aircraft are able to pursue that. That is called UAS operations, so unmanned aircraft systems. And they are doing a more of an independent study where they are able to learn about drones and complete the activities and learn about that. The other half is in the classroom again and learning more about pilot things, and theirs is called flight planning. And so flight planning is how do you actually navigate from airport to airport? We used plotters today, so what angle do I have to fly at in relation to my compass in order to make it from, for example, Milwaukee to Chicago Airport? So really getting down to the nitty-gritty details of what does it actually take to plan a flight and to actually fly that, that pathway. So that's the curriculum. In addition to the curriculum that we have, given to us from AOPA, we have been trying to incorporate some real-world experiences. So we've had guest speakers, 2 of them. One was from the Marine Corps to talk about aviation in the Marines. Another was from Embry-Riddle University to talk about the college pathway. So if a student wants to get a degree in aviation, what that could look like. Upcoming, we have PHS alum Nick Brunke, who is now a professional pilot, and he is going to come in May to speak to our class, so we're pretty excited about that. And we also had Dwayne Moss. So Dwayne Moss was, of course, the person who donated the flight simulator and got kind of the ball running on this, and he's been really awesome to keep in touch with. He came in a couple times to help us train in the flight simulator and also just kind of talk to the class about what being a pilot entails. So I got a couple more pictures of him training the students on the flight simulator. So the flight simulator is right over here in that room back there, and the students are free to use it. Given that they sign up beforehand, sign a permission slip, and then they can use it after school or during resource or anytime when I'm available to give them that key and say, okay, make sure you return that key when you're done. But that's been a really benefit from them to be able to kind of go and use that room and use the flight simulator and get that extra little bit of practice. So another experience we had, it was kind of a happy little coincidence that our weather unit lined up with the 3rd grade weather unit. So we went over to the elementary school and our students kind of broke up and divided up into each of the classrooms and talked about weather. We had some hands-on demonstrations for the 3rd graders and then also some presentations on how weather affects pilots. So that was a pretty fun piece there. That was in the fall. Upcoming, we are going to work with drones. These are the 3 drones that we currently have available, and so we'll be flying those and learning how to operate those drones. And then most recently, our trip was for Appleton Airport Day. And this was, this opportunity was provided to us through a grant, actually, so we didn't have to pay for any of it. It was all provided. So we went and we toured the Appleton Airport. We toured the Gulfstream facility, so big hangar full of private jets. And then this last one where the photo is from is the Appleton Air Maintenance Facility. So at that one, we saw all the different machines that they use to keep the runways clear and to keep the planes nice and clean and safe and able to go up in the air and to fly. So that was a great time. I got one more picture. All the students, it's kind of hard to see there, but got to go in the cockpit of an airplane and get their picture taken. So that was really a cool thing. And that's all I had. So Cassidy, if you want to take it away.
Hi, I'm Cassidy, and I chose to take this class because my grandpa was also really into flying, and he was a private pilot. So I'd really like to really continue that path. And then I think this class really fits with my post-secondary plans because I want to pursue a career in either aviation through college or aviation in the Air Force Academy. And then my favorite part of this class has either been teaching the younger kids or doing most of our hands-on learning, which was really fun for me. And then the most challenging part is the memorization of everything and how it's so new. And then something that was unexpected about this class was the third grade presentations, which was really fun, and being able to connect with those younger students who actually showed an interest in that career as well, which I thought was really fun.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bryce Denzine. As I said before, I'm a senior here at Pewaukee High School. I plan to attend Madison next year for business, which, leading into those first two questions, I've been enamored in flight ever since I was a little kid. My parents have kind of moved me into going to different air shows and just being very interested. And that kind of led into the whole reason I took the class in the first place, and also that post-secondary path. So my original plans before going to Madison now was Air Force Academy, Marine Academy, or Naval Academy. So earlier this year, or late 2022, I went through the entire process of getting the nominations from the different congressmen and senators. I ended up gaining admission to the academies, and then at a last moment decided against attending. But I can tell you that joining the aviation class was a great choice for me, and I'm still very interested in aviation. And in those nomination interviews, it was quite the feather in the cap to be able to explain how I was in an aviation course in my school, learning about the different aspects of aviation. So that was very beneficial to me, and I really enjoyed that I'm taking the course, even if I'm not potentially going through with it anymore. Saying that, my favorite part of the class, I would like to applaud Mrs. Plack here for finding such great mentors for us. My mentor this year and last year were both involved in the aviation field. So this year, my mentor is Ben Gerds. He actually runs the Air Guard base out in Madison. And he's flying F-16s, and now he's transitioning into the F-35 down in Destin, Florida right now, actually. So contact's been a little bit troublesome with that, but I'm very, very fortunate to have gained his knowledge on Air Guard, Air Force Academy, all that sort of stuff. And last year, I also had a great mentor who, which is interesting, we were able to visit Gulfstream very recently in April, or early April. So my mentor is a senior backshop completion manager up in Gulfstream in Appleton, but currently working down in Tulsa. I had a great opportunity to go up to that plant last year and get a full tour of that, and also see into the different aspects of his side of things and more construction of the aircrafts, and also to what more I'm looking to go into is more avionics sales and that sort of dealing with international customers. So I'm very thankful for all the mentors, and I've got to say, out of all the favorite things, being able to witness from professionals what they do and seeing how diversified the whole overall market of aviation has been is very, very awesome. The most challenging part, kind of to bounce off of Cassie here, the memorization is very difficult. I feel like an old man. My memory's pretty bad, so we're working on that piece. But just besides that, conceptualizing all the different
it gets
pieces.
so much better. You know, the older you get, the memory just gets better.
Great, awesome. But just conceptualizing all the different material that we've gone through. We've had weather for the whole first semester, and memorizing 20 clouds is pretty difficult, and just all the different weather phenomena. There's microbursts, virga, and just all these sorts of things that you need to know as a pilot and are very important and integral to having a successful flight and getting passengers to the ground safely. And then on top of that, remembering all the different runway signs, just all the different aspects of calling into people, calling into different airports and communicating that, or just reading weather reports. It's much more difficult than it originally seemed. And I think that's also what kind of led into the unexpected portion as well, just understanding those different concepts. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciated it, and yeah.
Thank you.
I'm hanging around.
All right, so in terms of what's next, now that we're 3/4 of the way through our first year at the aviation course, there are two different pathways for licensure that students can pursue should they choose to pursue either becoming a pilot or a commercial drone operator. And both of these courses provide a lot of that information for them. That is not to say that it will substitute for studying on their own should they choose to do this, because these are really rigorous exams that they would need to take should they do this. But the curriculum is a lot of that foundational knowledge that they will need to have in order to successfully pass these exams down the road, should this be their desire. So the drone pathway is actually what's called a Part 107 exam. We have found that, and when I say we, I mean Danielle and I in particular, attended a professional development through AOPA earlier this year, and there is a whole other language in aviation that we are not familiar with. And so I think we both left with a lot more questions than we had answers on things, and a lot of things that we needed to really research in order to be able to grow this program, and that's still very much happening. So the Part 107 exam is an exam to help to certify individuals who are age 16 or older to become commercial drone operators. Likewise, there is a written exam that is part of the pilot pathway, that is the FAA written knowledge exam, to essentially allow a student to get their temps in flying, is the easiest way to explain it. That is part of a much more robust pathway with a lot of additional pieces into it, and that will take students a little bit longer to get there. We're still figuring all of those things out. So in terms of where we're going next with this, the AOPA curriculum, like I said, has a curriculum rotation with 4 different years that it offers. Grades 10 and 11, we've discovered, have really a lot of the meat that students will need in order to really prepare for the Part 107 or the FAA written knowledge exam. So our intent is to rotate those 2 years of curriculum in order to allow students who are really passionate about this to take this course twice and then to get a real robust experience within all of the baseline knowledge that they're going to need to have. We need to continue our professional development. There is no question that there is a lot that we still need to learn about this field, and we're continuing to work on building community connections as well. We do have a new mentor on board who is Jeannie's grandson next year, which I'm really excited. Michael was a student here at PHS, and every time that we can bring one of our alumni in and have them come back and serve as a mentor is always amazing. One of the other things that we would like to do down the road is really work on building some Discovery Flight partners for the program. The Discovery Flight is a portion of that pilot pathway that is complicated, but that's really the next maybe logical step after students have taken 2 years of the aviation content. And that's essentially a one-time exploratory flight where students actually get up in the air with a certified flight instructor and can take over and experiment a little bit with flying under their direction. And then the last thing is, if we know that we don't know a lot about this, we know that our parents don't know a lot about what the next steps might be as well, particularly if any of our students are coming from families where aviation isn't something that the family's been exposed to previously. So I'm working on a presentation that I'll turn into a video that we'll be sending out to our families and our students, that if they're passionate about this, what are some of the next logical steps for them to take beyond this class? Because there's a whole lot of information out there, and it can be a little challenging to figure out how to navigate all of that if you're not really well-versed in this particular field. So those are some of the places that we hope to take it moving forward. But that's all we have for you tonight. I know you have a lot on the agenda, so we'll take any questions that you might have now.
I have one. Is this class just one class? Or some of our Insight programs are a couple hours long and it fills in a couple requirements?
Yes, this is a one credit
One
course
class,
that our students
okay.
can take, yes.
A couple questions. One, thank you for the presentation, and students, it's great to see you so excited about a new opportunity and a new door, if you will, for Pewaukee High School students. And Andriana or Danielle, relative to the AOPA group, are there like local people that are members of that we tap into, or how do we connect with them on a more local, state level? And then for the 3 schools, you said, I think there were 3 schools in Wisconsin. Do you know which other ones are?
So, if you take a look at the picture, actually, on this slide, this is Jeannie, Danielle, and I at the School Board Association conference, and we actually ran into Glenn there, who is from AOPA. So we do have some contacts through AOPA now that we've been building. I'm also trying to build some contacts through our local EAA chapter here in Waukesha. And it takes a bit of time sometimes to kind of get to know those people and to find out who the people are in the community to talk to. So that's definitely something that we're working on. We're in a really unique position right now where we have Waukesha and we're close to Milwaukee. And then we also have O'Hare not far away. We have EAA in Oshkosh. So, I mean, honestly, we have a wealth of resources in this particular area that's been really beneficial. We've also established a relationship with the Department of Transportation, who has been really helpful. They were the ones behind setting up the fantastic field trip that the students took, and they've helped me connect with some of our mentors as well. So those are the contact pieces. There was a second part of your question, Larry.
The other schools,
Oh.
I believe it's Waterford and Spash.
Boyceville is one of
Boyceville, that's
them.
right.
Boyceville is a very small rural school that's kind of northwest of Eau Claire.
I think Waterford is the other
Maybe.
one that has one after school, and then Spash has something, but I don't know that they actually use the curriculum. I think they just have like an aviation after-school club kind of a
We're
thing.
finding that, yeah, a lot of schools are starting to use the curriculum more as an after-school program than an actual class in Wisconsin. That is not true across the board. I mean, there are certainly areas of the country where aviation is a very well-established industry, and that's where you'll find a lot more of those schools that are using the curriculum right now.
I do know that Franklin, at least when I was principal there, had it. I don't know if they still do, but Franklin
Okay.
had an aviation program as well.
So do you have any idea how many students are potentially taking either the drone exam or the pilot's exam?
Right now,
Well, planning to or considering it to do the.
to be honest with you, they would need at least another year's worth of content before they would be ready for that, and hours of studying. The book itself's like this thick. So I'm not sure how many, I don't know. Cassidy, I don't know if you're planning on, embarking on that?
Like really thick. I'm trying to go through it all right now, but I definitely need another year or so in class.
If I can add to that as well, I think part of the issue with it as well is there's a large expense to it. So I remember my brother went through with that process a couple of years ago, and it's anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to just get your private pilot's license by itself. So I think for some high schoolers, it's a little bit difficult to come up with $130 for a flight at different times. But I have a buddy at Waukesha West going through it. He's going to go to Embry-Riddle, and he's going through that process, working and getting all the money to pay for the flights and doing online coursework as well to go through with it.
We do have a couple of students who've already started taking some of the flight academy,
Awesome.
through like Waukesha County Airport and things like that, so.
So Ryan, a question for you. Are you considering doing any kind of flight training above and beyond or not?
I am put off by the same barriers as the students, is the time and the money and the hours. But certainly, the more I teach this class, the more I know about aviation, so.
Great. Thank you. Very good job, by the way.
Cassidy is one of the students that's actually taking lessons right now, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, actually flying lessons now? Good. That's all.
Anybody else?
I would just say, great job. Thanks for being here tonight. It's exciting to hear about it and that it's being impactful. It sounds like on both of you in terms of your future, which is the idea. So I really appreciate the time and glad it's going well.
Have you stopped crashing?
That's ultimately the goal. That's kind of an important component at some point.
So one other quick question though, has the movie Maverick made any difference in terms of student interest or motivation?
but it's on Amazon Prime right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Thanks for being here.
Okay, moving on to our salutes and recognitions. Does anybody have anything they would like to salute or recognize? No? Mike?
Yeah, I have a couple. I would like to recognize Julie for the work she did with following, the board election. She always has a role to play with making sure candidates have everything that they need to know, organizing the canvas. John, thank you as well for your work with overseeing the canvas that happens and just onboarding process with new board members. So Julie's always instrumental in making sure that that goes smoothly, and anybody who's served on this board knows what a resource she is. I'd like to, and I'm sure Brian Sniff would appreciate this, recognize Susie Matson for all the work she has done with preparing us for our honors banquet, which will be this Wednesday. I know that she's critical in making sure that that goes off well, and as well as acknowledging Brian and all the work that he's doing to make that go well. And I'd like to give a shout out to Danielle as well, becoming our amateur AI expert. Danielle's really taken the bull by the horns with trying to keep us as up to speed and as ahead of the game as possible on the very rapid advancements with artificial intelligence and what that means for may mean for us in terms of instruction and for how our employees may work, and has become a real resource in that. So those would be the salutes I have this evening.
Are the teachers excited or nervous?
Yes.
Hopefully we can keep them on the excited path and really
Yes.
use it as a great tool.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
All right, moving on, we have comments from citizens. Chris, we have a card from you. Do you want to step up?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'll be brief. There was a concerning situation recently regarding racist language used by a middle schooler that was brought to light, and I wanted to make sure that the full board was aware of it. The language of the student in question was disturbing and completely unacceptable. But even more concerning is that I understand it may not have been isolated. I know that we have a blanket anti-harassment policy in place, and I think that's great. I believe we need to do more to foster a school climate that is truly inclusive and welcoming to all our students, our Black and brown students definitely, by swiftly and harshly addressing any racist words and actions. Let's be clear with students about our expectations and the disciplinary consequences that they will face for any racist behaviors. Let's go ahead and create a specific policy, an anti-racist policy, so that everybody is clear on what things are looking like at all our schools on campus. Incidents like these are absolutely trauma-inducing for minority students, and they need to be condemned unanimously and absolutely. Culture starts at the top, and that means right here at the board level. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
That's the only card I have. Julie, did you get any more? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the previous meeting, School Board, Business Affairs, and the Board of Canvassers. We had some correspondence in our packet. We did not have any gifts. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on, since we had Officer Budenhagen here, we are going to get our update from her.
This is the first time Carrie's been here.
Yes, and it is the first time. Our
Welcome,
new-
Julie and Carrie, and Chief Hire. Thanks for being here tonight as well. Hello.
We'll start by introducing ourselves. I am Julie Budenhagen. I've been at the Village of Pewaukee Police Department for about 19 years. I'm the older one of the two of us. And I've been an SRO here at the district since 2017, 2018 school year. So I'm very blessed to be here for this long, and I'm happy that Carrie's on board.
I'm Carrie Corris. I've been with Pewaukee for 7.5 years now. I actually came from WCTC, so I was a school resource officer at WCTC for about 5 years, and then I got on board here in January.
All right.
Hard to read.
My vision is being
We're
tested
old.
right now. So, just some key points. We have so many roles as school resource officers, so these were just some that I thought were important to talk about. So in spring of 2022, we started Life Skills. It is a program very similar to DARE. We actually started with 5th and 6th grade because due to COVID, 6th graders didn't get DARE. So we implemented Life Skills. Officer Lenius, who was our DARE instructor for many, many, many years, looked over the curriculum and was kind of amazed at how close it is. The thing that I really like, and it was much needed, was to get me in the classrooms a little bit more consistently with our middle school age, late elementary kids, to start building those relationships. Just, instead of just saying hi in the hallway, to actually get in there and get to know them and to have that positive interaction. We are continuing to see the use of vaping devices, some which contain THC. I don't know that it necessarily increased, it's just a continuation of what we've seen in the past. We're trying really hard to get on top of that and try to figure out what we can do to decrease that. Education is one to these kids. I think getting Life Skills back, or that type of curriculum back into the district, is going to be helpful. We implemented Crime Stoppers last year, which gives students the ability to remain anonymous and even get tip money if their report is fruitful. So if we do find some type of device. We are doing an increase in safety assessments for students. We use safety assessments for two different types of reports. One is if a student is struggling with some mental health issues, possibly being suicidal, we'll do a safety assessment to make sure that they're safe, or what type of resources we can give to them, and that's something we do as a multidisciplinary team with counselors, the school psychologist, and Michelle Davison, the school social worker. And we also do safety assessments when we might get a report of a possible threat that is directed towards one student. So we will, again, get our team together, depending on the school, and we'll work through that process where we're really making sure that we're covering all bases to see how credible the threat could be, and what our best options are to keep everybody here safe, including that student. We're seeing an increase in social media use among students. So, I'm sorry, did you have a question, Dr. Katie?
No, I was scratching my head.
Okay, so we've seen an increase in social media use. It's always something that students have been doing, but we're seeing more reports coming in from what is being posted on certain social media apps. Snapchat's a huge one, so people are posting videos to their story. It is raising concern to other students at the school, even if it's posted the night before, so it's kind of being brought to our attention. So we're just seeing an increase in reports of what's being posted, whether or not it's at school or outside of school. Carrie's here, so that is huge as a key point that we were able to add a second school resource officer. It's really given us the opportunity to be more proactive and building those relationships. There's oftentimes when we're so busy, or at least that I was super busy, where I might be bogged down with paperwork and I'm not getting over to Pewaukee Lake Elementary when it was just me. So Carrie's been a godsend. She's been amazing. She's really building those relationships with our younger kids, and she's also at Asa Clark Middle School, so really helping with that age group as well. And then, as always, we're continuing to see the parking issues on campus and outside of campus. We're really utilized as a liaison, not only between, the district and our students, but also the community and some of these issues. So we're pretty busy with that aspect. Sorry to keep talking. This is my slide too. Okay. Our role is continually evolving. We wear many different hats. There are sometimes things that come up that we wouldn't have thought it was a school resource officer role, but we're really used for many, many things. It's huge that we're building relationships not only with students, but also with staff and families. We listen to kids. Just being at the high school, I have a few kids that I've gotten to know over the years. That will stop in before the first class of the day just to say hi. Sometimes I have a candy bucket, so they want some of my candy, but it's just really nice to be able to have that relationship with them where they're coming in to say hello or telling me about their weekend. We're a mediator, again, that's sometimes between students. It can be if families have questions about an incident that maybe happened over the weekend where one of our partners, had contact with them. Sometimes we're kind of that mediator liaison and just maybe explaining to them and having the time to sit down with them and explaining to them the situation. We do home visits for kids. Sometimes that home visit is to confirm that they do live here in Pewaukee or in the school district jurisdiction. Other times it's because a student hasn't been to school for days and maybe they're not called in, so we're just making sure that they're doing okay and that something, more badly happened. We try to connect students with needed resources. So sometimes we'll be over, let's say at Pewaukee Lake Elementary or Horizon, and we're dealing with some kiddos that might need extra clothing or extra food. We work with Positively Pewaukee on some of those donations, as well as other resources, possibly our social services. It just depends on the situation, but we have many resources that it's not necessarily our role, but we'd be able to give those students some help or families. I think I skipped one, reinforce positive behavior. So the nice thing about being a school resource officer is that we're not handing out tickets left and right like we do on the, not that we do that on the road, but as a patrol officer, our contact with the public is a lot more negative than it is here, where we can say, hey, good job for doing that. Whether it's a positive behavior on the bus or sticking up for somebody that might be cyberbullied. There's a lot of reasons to give some positive feedback to kids, and it's really nice to be able to do that here. We work with John Stangler, our safety coordinator, daily. If there's a critical incident or a crisis incident of any kind, he's usually our go-to, and we work together as a team. We respond to our Raptor. So hopefully you're familiar with our Raptor app, but we just utilized it for our safe weather drills or severe weather drills. And it's amazing. Like, I'll get an alert on my phone. Carrie works 7 to 3, I work 8 to 4, and I was coming in the other day at 7:30 and I get the alert, and that tone just kind of scares you a little bit, gets your heart going, and I'm like, oh, it's a drill. But it is such an amazing drill to have, and it's a quick communication. So if there's an issue at any of our schools, anybody who has that app can hit a button, and Carrie and I are made aware as well as other staff. We're mentors to students. Carrie will talk a little bit more about it in other slides, but we started an after-school program with the help of Positively Pewaukee and our fire department. We are looking to spend some positive interactions with Horizon and Asa Clark students after school. Right now, we're just doing 2 days a month, so 1 day at each school. But it's really helped to just have that positive interactions outside of school where we're not getting pulled away for something else. We're focused on the kids, we're playing games, we're having snacks, kind of just having fun, so we can kind of get to know each other that way. We guest speak in classes, read books at PLE, and we're a member of our safety assessment team in each school. I kind of talked about that for the any type of safety assessment. And then we're also a member of our school security team. Okay, I'm done talking.
Do you want to just be my
No,
clicker?
no.
Okay.
Okay, I got it.
Some opportunities that have helped us build relationships is networking with staff. So that's checking in every day. How are things going with kids that we know we've dealt with pretty frequently? How are things going in your classroom? We've been guest speaking in classes talking about current trends that we're seeing. This week we actually started our internet safety presentations at Asa Clark Middle School. So we're talking about how to be safe online, posting on social media, things to look out for, those predators that are out there, and how to keep yourself safe. We're doing one-on-one meeting with students to check in, see how they're doing. And then, like Julie said, our after-school program at Horizon and ASA, we're just meeting with a bunch of kids after school, getting to know them. We picked Horizon and ASA because they're in that age group where they're kind of finding themselves. Maybe they're thinking about engaging in bad behavior. They're on their phone. Social media is a big thing. So we're just trying to help build that positive interaction with them and make good choices. Ooh, that is small print. All right. And I'm not the old one. I know. Some priorities that we have: being visible on campus. That's walking around in all the buildings, driving through the parking lots. we all know that gun violence is on the rise. We're seeing it every day, and it is absolutely terrifying. On the bright side, we're really blessed to have the school that we do, to have us here, to have cameras in place, safety in place. I mean, we are very, very fortunate. A lot of schools don't have that. There is new required training for law enforcement. It's called crisis intervention training, and it's about how to respond to kids and adults that are going through a mental health crisis. So they talk about all different types of mental illness and how to appropriately respond. So that is new training that we all have gone through recently, and it is very helpful because unfortunately that is also a big deal right now. Vaping, again, some have THC, some have tobacco, so we're working on how can we keep our schools safe, how can we teach kids about the dangers of vaping, through that one-on-one contact, through teaching in classes, being the guest speaker. Going back to the internet safety, educating students on sextortion, it is a huge, huge issue right now, especially for teens and younger. We're seeing it on Snapchat and Instagram where they're being targeted to send inappropriate pictures, and these predators are requesting money or they are going to ruin their life. It's very unfortunate, and they're falling victims to it. So this week we started our presentations, and we're really hoping that we get the word across. Cyberbullying, that's still a thing. Again, we try to make it known to students. We can't help them if they don't let us know about it. So we're really encouraging kids to speak up, come to us, report things that are going on, report what you're seeing. That's the only way that we can help. And continuing to network with local SROs, we created a group where we're meeting maybe once a month with SROs in the area, talking about what are you guys seeing? How are you handling different situations? What are some new trends? How are your kids doing? Let's talk about what we have going on. And it's just a great way to network so we can all be together, because if something were to happen, we're all going to come together anyway. This
Okay.
one's yours.
Some things that we are starting to work on, we are working with our village attorney right now to try to come up with an enhancer for any tobacco or illegal drug violations that happen on school ground and also in our parks. So that is something that's being actively worked on. I'm hoping it just sends a clear message to these teens not to be bringing this stuff into the schools. We're continuing to educate students and parents on internet safety, sextortion, cyberbullying, and online predator cases. Like Carrie said, this is a huge problem. We're very lucky to have Sarah Durain, a special agent from the FBI, that's assisting us with these presentations this week. We're also having a parent presentation that's virtual tomorrow evening. She's been a godsend, although Carrie and I have been working these cases and will pass a lot of them on to her because she has the jurisdiction. The kids see FBI or hear it and their eyes light up and they listen. Not that they don't respect us, but it's just, it really is clear that they're understanding how serious this is when she comes and talks. We're continuing to build positive relationships with students, including our after-school program. We're continuing to strive to provide an environment where students and staff feel safe and is conducive to learning. I've had a few staff members and students who will come with any type of safety concerns, and it's really nice to have that open door policy where we can kind of talk through it. I've had parents call and say, hey, why isn't this implemented in Pewaukee? And we're able to bring it to our safety committee meetings, which is really nice. Again, everybody's so open here to new ideas and discussions. We're continuing to attend trainings on school safety and school threats. So between Carrie and I, we've done our alert training, which is put on by the FBI. Pewaukee's actually hosted one, so we're doing active shooter training on a regular basis. And then we're continuing to attend trainings on juvenile mental health. Real quick, I know you guys have a busy agenda, but that was one thing when I first came off the streets and came to the schools. We're so used to being police officers and getting people to, we're trying to make the scene safe and we're trying to get people to listen to us. We're used to making people listen to us. And these kids that have mental health crises, we're learning that you have to take a complete step back, give them their space as long as they're safe and other people are safe. We have all the time in the world to make sure that we can get through that crisis, which is just a change, and it's really helpful to have that training.
Some goals and achievements so far and looking into 2023, obviously I just started in the beginning of January, so my position is new. I'm able to cover PLE and Asa Clark, whereas Julie's at Horizon and the high school. We're able to get around into the schools a lot more, to be a lot more visible. So just having the second position up here has already been very beneficial. The crisis intervention training I already talked about. Julie is doing her life skills program, talking to the Horizon Elementary School. And when I first started, I went to every classroom in PLE and introduced myself, and I made a lot of new friends.
Again, we're working on stronger ordinances for the possession of use of vaping and other illegal drugs on school grounds. We put together the mentorship program, again, with our fire departments. I just feel like it's really important to build those relationships with the students, and outside of school is even nicer, because then we're not worrying about any other calls for service that we might get. We are helping with ALICE training for staff, and I think it just really empowers staff to understand what their options are if there's ever an active threat, and just to be able, again, to answer questions if they have a question about their classroom and what they should do. We obviously have a lot of new glass windows that are really nice. There was some concern about that for certain classrooms, but we're able to work through that just by taking a look at the room and to figuring some things out for their staff members and students. We did Stop the Bleed training again with the Pewaukee Fire Department to make sure that we're keeping up with all the new trends. We have Stop the Bleed kits in pretty much every room in the school district, which is really helpful. And then we also just did rescue task force training with our fire department as well in the schools. That's all we have.
Thank you, great report.
Yes, thank you very much. Does anyone have anything?
I was just wondering, you mentioned vaping. Are there other substances, alcohol, that are of concern to you gals along with the vaping, or is that the main one?
I would say right now we're seeing the vapes a lot. We just had canines come through not that long ago, and that's what we're seeing. I personally haven't seen any alcohol on campus yet. I'm not saying it can't happen or won't happen, but it's just, I think every year something different comes up that kids are using and trying.
Yeah, and we're just finding that the vapes are very concealable. They have more of a fruity odor, so it can smell more like an air freshener back like when we were kids, some of us. It was a lot of cigarettes. So you knew when somebody was smoking a cigarette. This is a little bit different. It's very concealable. They are in many different shapes and sizes, and it's just a trend that continues, unfortunately.
How's your after-school program, the enrollment? Are you getting a lot of interest in that?
For Horizon, yeah, we
Yeah.
have over 30 kids that want to come hang out. And then our middle school, we have maybe 8,
Maybe
5.
it's smaller.
It depends on the day. They don't
Yeah.
always, they don't have to come every time, but
Yeah, Horizon's been amazing.
yeah.
Those kids have a lot of energy after school. Yeah, I was hoping
It's hard to keep up sometimes.
Yeah, I was hoping to have more at ASA. It just, that is the age where, like Carrie said, they're trying to find themselves. But you know what? I'll take what we have, and it's nice to, they can spread the word, and maybe next year will be better.
Yeah.
It's kind of our experimental year,
It's
so
our
we're trying to
trial
figure
run,
it out.
yeah. Trial run, for sure.
How many questions you get about what's on your belt?
Oh my
A
gosh.
lot,
Every
especially at
day.
the little,
Do they try to guess?
especially the elementary kids,
Yeah.
yeah. Or they want to know if we can handcuff them, and
Yeah.
we try not to do that during the day.
Right.
Larry?
One, given that Chris is here and Chief is here, I mean, I've been on the school board since we started the program, and I think it's been very, very, very great partnership. So I think we owe the village trustees and the police department here in the village of Pewaukee a great deal of thanks for helping us support an SRO program here in the Pewaukee School District. And we've seen some pretty significant results in terms of having you on campus and working with us in terms of keeping our kids safe here. And for some of us who have been exposed to some of the things that have happened in different parts of the country, it's one of those things that it's a really, really weighs on your mind in terms of the safety of the students, and especially in our campus, where we have close to 3,000 students and 300 or 400 staff members here. that are potentially very vulnerable. So thank you to the Village Police Department. Thank you to the village trustees for your support of this program. It's a partnership, and we truly, truly appreciate that partnership in terms of what you provide, in terms of doing that. The other thing, Julie, we've seen you in a few of our interventions when you have brought forward students where some of the behaviors or activities have not been compliant with district policies. And again, I think that that's done very well in the sense that you help gather the evidence or gather the facts in terms of bringing those things forward, because yes, indeed, to keep kids safe here, we have to sometimes expel a student or two, and that's a very, very important part of your role as well, so thank you for doing that. I do have two questions for you, though. So what has been the most satisfying part of your role? And then the second question is, what's been the most challenging part of your role? So,
Oh, boy. Do you want to answer that first?
Sure.
Okay.
I think satisfying is, honestly, it's been a great change for me, coming from the college where I handled mostly adults and they didn't have to go to school if they didn't want to, and it was just a complete different mindset. So I'm challenged a lot more. Just making an impact on the kids. Like, they remember me, I remember them. They're like, oh, I saw you in the hallway last week. I'm like, I'm in the hallway every day, like every week. I'm always here. And they're just so happy to see me. And that you don't get when you're out on the road, because people aren't happy to see you out there. And so it's been really, really great. Challenging, I think, is just the adjustment for me. Learning more how to deal with juveniles and kids and making sure that they're safe. And sometimes I can get a little emotional because it is hard to see a kid going through something really hard, mental health or something at home that I never experienced as a kid. And so it's very hard to see, and I just want to be there for them. But overall, it's been really great.
Yeah, I think the best thing for me is, for one, I'm very, very blessed to love my job as a police officer, and I always have. I've always enjoyed coming to work, but I love it even more now that I get to come up here. Every day is very positive. Yes, sometimes we do have to be reactive, and we do have to deal with some discipline issues, but seeing the staff and students, again, who can stop in my office and come in and just talk to me and tell me how their day is, like that says a lot to me, that they trust me, they respect me, and we can have a conversation at any point. We're just seeing a change of attitude towards law enforcement, and not necessarily in our community, but just in the world as it is right now, and it is so positive. So it is amazing, and I love that part of it. My challenge really is the ongoing nationwide threats and gun violence. It's disheartening what the world has come to, and just always making sure that we're prepared and having a plan in place if something happens, and to continuing on with our training, and not on the quite same level as that. But the vaping really bothers me because it is something that once younger kids see, I feel like it's just going to trickle down into other schools. So I want to make sure that somehow we get on top of that. So we're always looking for new ways to implement something to try to stop the vaping.
so, and one other quick question. You mentioned the term, the crisis intervention training that you've had. What's a real short description of what that is? And again, why are you going through that training?
So
We both went through it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's new training for law enforcement. Pretty much everybody's required to go through it now. It's a whole week-long training on how to handle a patrol response for people that are going through a mental health crisis.
Yeah, and they go over different types of mental health crises, what that means, what resources we can offer them, how to handle situations. Part of that training, real quickly, was wearing headphones and getting an idea just for an hour and a half of what a schizophrenic may be going through when they hear voices. So we had to take a test, fill out a job application, go through an interview with headphones on, with voices talking to us. So it gives us a little taste of what people suffering from mental illness might be going through. And again, it opened us up to many resources in our county of how we can help those individuals.
Good job, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great report. Thanks. Appreciate everything you guys do.
Keep up the great work, and again, thank you to the village and to the chief, so.
John, you getting ready?
He's getting the clicker.
It's a 2 hour,
Danielle, you got your soda ready?
load up on the caffeine and
Yep.
try to stay awake.
What? This is so interesting.
This is like, this is the
There's
good
a lot of
favorite
numbers on these
part.
pages.
This is the good stuff.
I just love to razz Danielle about this.
So, welcome everybody. Tonight is really the culmination of about 4 to 5 months of work already. So everybody thinks of the start of the school year is everything's fired up, everything is new. That means in the business office that you have about 2 months before you start the next budget cycle to get ready for the next year. And that's really what we're talking about, the culmination of that work that started back last September, October, all the way up to this point, to put a budget together for the start of our fiscal year on July 1st of 2023. So when we do that, we really try to be principled in our decision-making and in the process that we use to make sure we address everything that's outstanding in the district. Recognizing, first and foremost, that investment that our community makes in these facilities and in the trust that they have in the programming that we're delivering on a daily basis to all the students and the responsibility that comes with that. Our mission drives every decision that we make in the district. So as we talk about opening the door to each child's future, that's a great tagline whenever there's a request to include in the budget in that. How is this aligned with our mission? How is this going to open that door for students? And you'll hear a couple of phrases, you'll hear 3 words consistently throughout this: predictability, sustainability, and spendable. Spendability. I don't know if that's a word.
It is
now. But that's really what we talk about when we talk about school finance and what we're looking at as we move forward as a district. So we come together with a balanced budget that we bring to the board with conservative estimates on revenue. At this point of the year, this year, I'll talk to you a little bit about the biennial budget process. There's a lot of unknowns. A typical year where the biennial budget process is starting, we have a solid baseline from where we're coming from. Because of the previous biennium and the reliance on one-time federal money for any inflationary increases the district has had, we don't have that clear baseline of where the funding is starting moving into the next 2 years. So we're really going back 2 years and trying to figure out what does it take to fill that hole. It's been called over and over the fiscal cliff. How do we fill that hole when that one-time money goes away, when our base of our budget, our revenue limit, has not been increased 6 out of the last 8 years. And we'll talk about that a little bit. The staffing plan really drives everything that we do. Saab and Dylan, you'll be happy to know that when you fill out your course selection paperwork in January, that is the primary step that is driving the allocation of the resources in the budget. Call it a student-centric budgeting process. So what those demands are for the student population and for the parents for courses and that becomes a priority to try to staff to those requests as much as we can within the resources that we have. When we go through the staffing plan, you'll see what that translates into in this budget document. Safety of the campus and efficiency of operations, one pillar of the strategic plan that we have, but a high priority, as you heard the SROs talk about at our previous presentation. So overall, the 23-24 budget, we're looking at a projected increase in our operating budget of 3.66%. Why is that greater than the general fund? So the general fund makes up a majority of the budget of the district. Fund 27 is where all of the costs of special education are accounted for. Part of the budget development and the assumption that we're making in this budget is that we are going to receive an increase in the refunding, in the amount that's refunded of the net cost of special education. That decreases an expense in the general fund. So that general fund is going to come in lower with the overall cost increases. Highly dependent on the biennial budget, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those factors that we have. Good news is, with the proposal that we have right now, we're projecting another decrease in the property tax levy for the school district in the fall of this year. That'll be the 4th consecutive year that the levy itself has decreased within the district. That also will correspond to a decrease in the mill rate. Right now, predicting about $7.76. One important thing to remember in the school district, the mill rate is the byproduct of what changes in the property value. So take your total levy, divide it by the property value. We don't control property values. We are given that number in October, just prior to the certification of the levy. The mill rate is the byproduct, so we don't tax based on a rate per property. We set a fixed levy that is set. And student enrollment really drives the whole process here. So we're predicting about 1.2% increase in student enrollment. We've returned to increasing enrollment. We're 20% of districts or less or so in that range of the state that are not declining in enrollment. So we're in a very good position financially with slow growth in our enrollment, translates into slow growth in our revenue limit. This strategic focus, and you see the 6 areas highlighted by teaching and learning on the chart here, is really the focus of how we allocate funds within the budget and how we meet student needs within the district. The focus this year of this 3-year cycle with the strategic plan has been on sustainability and future ready programming. So as we go through strategic planning next month, 3 weeks from now, you'll hear that reiterated throughout. This budget will allocate the resources to support the goals of that strategic plan. I talked about a few of these things. The ESSER funding, which was the federal funding that we received, overall as a district, we will receive about $3.2 to $3.3 million over the 4-year period of the funding. We anticipate having a small, about $950,000 remaining in there at the end of this current fiscal year, which will be applied to as a revenue in the 23-24. So we're anticipating having that federal funding this year. We have about $1.5 million of that funding that we're going to utilize. So it's about a 50% reduction in the amount of funding, that amount of the budget that's supported by those federal funds.
You said 1.5 this year?
Yep.
And you think 750?
About 950.
950,
Yeah.
okay.
So, looking at the overall expenditures and revenues, you'll see on there we have $100,000 as a surplus. This has been a practice of this board in developing budgets since around 2000. Just showing that it's important for us to put funds away as a reserve on an annual basis to build those reserves. And this year it's really translated for 23-24 fiscal year. We do not anticipate needing to cash flow borrow. That'll be the first time in over 20 years that we don't anticipate having to borrow funds to be able to meet our payrolls and that until our taxes come in. The first real revenue, large revenue we receive in a year is the property tax levy in January. So we have to operate from July to then on our operating reserves. That's why it's important that we stay disciplined in the budget management to make sure that we add to those reserves to keep up with the increase in costs that we have.
Question on that. You had spoken with the city about getting our revenues a little bit early. Is that part of this?
This year transitioning, one of the expenditure areas that we'll talk about is moving to self-funding of our health insurance. We believe that will also save some of our upfront cost for this year that will aid in the in the funds that we have available to meet those payrolls. If it gets close, if it gets to that point, we'll work with our municipalities. We received that first installment in January, the third Monday in January. We usually have a payroll the Friday before. So a couple of days early by getting that, if we can get part of that tax revenue 3 days earlier, 3 or 4 days earlier, we'll be able to avoid having to borrow for it, even if it's short term.
You're going to ask them to cut 2 checks.
So I gave you an idea of the revenues and what makes up the revenues for our district. As you can see, 55% is local sources. A majority of that is property taxes in our district. Small pieces, some student fees, some interest earnings, things like of that nature make up a small portion, but the largest majority of that local sources is coming from local property taxes. State sources, primarily general equalization aid, along with any grants, competitive grants that we're receiving. Also, per pupil aid comes from there. This chart with the red piece there illustrates the importance of open enrollment to the district. We've always looked at having a net open enrollment. From 1998, we had a net negative open enrollment. I believe there were 5 or 6 students going out and 3 or 4 coming in to the district. And it was identified by this board as a quality indicator for the district that a goal was to continue to have a positive open enrollment trend. We reversed that relatively quickly in a couple of years, and since then we've been positive in our open enrollment numbers. I believe we're projecting 288 incoming students next year and about 99 outgoing students from the district. And then, as you can see, the federal sources, this includes the $950,000 that we're projecting for the last of the ESSER funding that's available. And then the balance of it is Title I, some of the title grants that Danielle manages, or any other competitive grants that we would be getting through the federal government. Here's another look at the revenues. The top two really are the components of our revenue limit. So as you can see, this budget projects an increase within our revenue limit for the upcoming year. Other aid, looking down where you see federal grants, you can see there about $526,000 of a decrease in what we're budgeting. That represents the decrease from spending about 1.5 to roughly $950,000 next year to support that.
John, can you explain the big increase in
Equalization aid is a formula for distribution that is dependent on how much you spend per pupil, how your property value ranks compared to other districts in the state, and the overall pot of money that's going to be distributed for the entire state. So they're all contingent on what's happening all around. We have a structure of our expenses within this equalization formula. It counts both your general fund and your debt service fund for expenses. So our structure results in us seeing a decrease one year, as you can see, a decrease of about 15%. And then the next year, depending on what happens with those factors, you'll see an increase in aid. So we've ranged from, in the last 10 or 12 years, we've seen anywhere from a 15% reduction to upwards of 150% increase in aid way back when we were aided real low. And percentages are really deceptive when it comes to that change in aid, because a district that gets $1 million in aid a year, if they go up to $1.1 million, they got $100,000 more, it's 10% increase. But a district that's getting 10 million, if they get $100,000, it's minuscule. So it's really focusing on the formula with it. So I want to talk a little bit about the fiscal cliff in that situation and what that looks like. So this gives you a history of what has happened to the allowable increases in revenue for the district since 2009, 2010. That year is important because in 2008-9 was the last year that the revenue limit formula in statutes gave us an inflationary increase. So in 08-09, the inflationary increase was taken out of the increase to the per pupil funding on the revenue limit. Ever since then, it's done on a biennial basis. Every 2 years, the legislature decides this is how much we're going to give you in aid or in allowable increases in funding. You can see in 2011-12, that was the year where we had Act 10. We saw a significant reduction in the per pupil amount with corresponding reductions in our expenses. After that point, the per pupil aid was introduced as a way to give increases. So the center column represents the revenue limit. When the revenue limit goes up, if the equalization aid doesn't go up the same percentage or ratio, you end up with an increase in property taxes. So a way to control property taxes using the revenue limit is to put the revenue in as a per pupil aid. Now increases to the per pupil aid do not drive increases to property taxes. So as you can see, the history of that, and the note on the bottom, between 2018 and 21, the average increase that we've had in funding was $211 a year. That does not keep up with the cost of recruitment and retention or expenses that we have. As you look through your budget documents, you'll notice that a lot of the expenses that we have as a district are remaining relatively the same for next year. They're, based on the assumptions of where we think the state budget is gonna go, we are maintaining programming, we're maintaining our investment, and we're maintaining what we have. There's not a lot of additional investment that we can make. Looking back, all the way back to 2002, when Wisconsin was ranked 11th in the country in their support of public education. They were 11% above the national average, all the way up to 2020 now, where we have dropped to number 25 in the country and 5.6% below the national average for the level of support for education. So, and that is before this last biennium where the revenue limit went up 0 and the per pupil aid went up 0. So when this is updated, when these numbers are updated, we would anticipate that that slide would continue on there. I want to just illustrate, so you've heard about fiscal cliff, you've heard about this, and when this federal one-time money, so predictable, sustainable, one-time money is not sustainable for long-term decisions because it has to be replaced with something down the road. The Legislative Fiscal Bureau, and one of the appendices in your report shows that their analysis of in the 21-22 and the 22-23 fiscal year, had there been an inflationary increase to the per pupil funding, that would have come out to about $714 per pupil. If we take that same inflationary factor and look at 23-24 and 24-25, the total predicted authority that would be there, that would be needed to make up for those 2 years of 0 and go for the next 2 years of inflation-adjusted increases is about 1510, and you've seen that consistently through a lot of the advocacy materials that you've been seeing. The reason that bar from blue to orange doesn't drop straight down is that $950,000 that we have left to bridge the next year. This is the revenue limit, and it's a graphical representation, Stacy, as you can see in that far right where that gray bar is getting bigger, that represents that equalization aid. So you can see what's happened with the aid. As our population has grown and the rest of the state's population has gone down in their districts, our cost per pupil stays relatively stable because we're increasing cost, but our population is growing about the same rate. As other districts are increasing cost and decreasing students, that cost per pupil is going up even faster. Gives us a greater proportion of the equalization aid that comes out of the pot. Let's switch from revenues to the expense side. We are a people business. That is the bottom line on it. About 79 to 80% of our operating budget is salaries and benefits for our staff members to serve the needs of the students. The next biggest piece of the pie is purchase services, and this is one where we've got some of the biggest pressures on in the district. Utilities, in January, rates went up over 13% on utilities. We've seen transportation rates go up substantially faster than our allowable revenues over the last 3 to 5 years. Purchase services is where if we can find a more cost-effective manner to provide a service then we can do it in-house, we outsource it. We pay for somebody else's professional expertise to be able to do that work. If you take those 3 big pieces of the pie, you're up 95+%. The rest of it is the stuff. It's the equipment, the supplies, the tables, the cleaning materials, all of those things. So there's really a small proportion of that budget that is manageable by those types of costs. We have to look at what's most cost effective. We've always used a rule of thumb that 70 to 75% range on personnel cost is where you have the ability to make some additional investments to plan ahead. We created Fund 41, we created Fund 46, where we had growth and we had those costs in that 70 to 75% range where we could invest into Fund 41 for future capital projects and plan ahead, be predictable into our future. Getting up closer to 80% for the 22-23 and 23-24 school year has put pressure on that. We're getting tighter and tighter on the allocations in the budget.
Services that we do?
Sure. Transportation, we outsource transportation. That's the biggest one. It's about $1.5 million in the budget. Utilities are about $850,000. That is another significant one. The cost for the SROs The SRO, part of it is out of the operating budget, the general fund. That's a piece of it. So those are some of the biggest. As I said earlier, enrollment is one of the key elements. So you can see on this chart where we went some rapid growth cycles in the district in the last 25 years. Each one of these you could tie back to the development of some large subdivisions, usually. We also see a lot of growth from residential turnover within the district and houses that younger families move into. You can see in 2020, the drop in enrollment that represented about 101 students. That was the fall where we came back in COVID. And a lot of younger families chose to keep their children at home. We stabilized, I would say, in 2021. We lost about 18, 20 kids that year from our total enrollment. Part of that was from a large graduating class, so it wasn't offset with as many kids coming in. But we started to grow back now. And again, slow growth. As we look moving forward, we're predicting 2,725 full-time equivalency students this year in the budget. That would be resident students in the district. An increase of a little over 30. The staffing plan is really driven then by those student enrollment numbers. And the top number on there, you can see where any additional investment through this budget process has been tied right into teachers and instruction. That 2.25 represents several part-time positions. So we have high demand coming through in French and Chinese that represented both part-time positions being posted, and you'll see them coming through in the personnel hiring coming through. We had some part-time positions, 2 part-time positions in special education to be able to meet student needs as they're coming through, and also in physical education, about 0.25 FTE. So the rest of it is little pieces here and there. One section of a class that we had to add at the high school. It's a 0.17 FTE. So there are no full-time positions that are added in here, and the highest increase in any single position is a 0.5 that's in here. The difference in the other one that you'll see there is district assistants. This is really returning our operations to pre-COVID time. During COVID, we staffed our nurse's office with some additional resources. This represents about 7 hours a day across the district less as a plan moving into next year.
Is that like our paras and stuff?
Yes, the pairs are included in there.
Part of it, John, correct me if I'm off on this, but I think we've had some situations where we've added special ed teachers.
Mhm.
Oh.
And then we've been able to reduce. some
Right.
needs,
Right.
Like ASA and.
Yep. That was the biggest move. So getting back to the tax levy, and I mentioned a bunch of this previously as we were talking about it, but looking historically at the tax levy, the general fund makes up the biggest part of it. The referendum debt service makes up the second largest component. Those are both within the revenue limit, along with the capital projects fund, that's Fund 41. We contribute a small amount to that every year now, because when you do make expenses out of there, you get to allocate those expenses over the number of years that you contributed to that fund when it comes to their impact on the equalization aid formula. So if we spent $1 million out of that fund and it all hit the equalization formula in 1 year, we would see 15% reduction in our aid the following year. By allocating, we've been adding to that fund since 2008. By putting money in there, now we get to spread that cost over 15 years. So instead of $1 million hit, it's 70,000, 60,000. Any amount. And finally, outside of the revenue limit is the community service fund. Also, outside of the revenue limit is the community service fund. Here is the CRO, and this is the addition of that we made this past year. This is for a full year cost. You can see the increase is about $54,000, but that's the difference between having somebody just a half a year and having them here for the summer for the first time and for the remainder of for the full calendar year or full school year next year.
just had Carrie here tonight. Her position is funded through that, and a piece of Julie's, her extension into the summer. The summer program is also included.
You can see, pretty conservative on the property tax base and the increase there. Last year, the statewide average property taxes went up over 16%. We went up a little over 8%. So we lagged the state in change in value. It's good news for us because now our value per pupil is decreasing relative to what the rest of the state is experiencing, which means it feeds into that additional equalization aid that we're gonna be looking at. I'm estimating at 3.99, roughly 4%. So what happens is if that goes up 10% for us this year, it will just cut that tax rate down further. It would shave another 30 or 40 cents off that tax rate. So the tax rate, again, is the byproduct of the levy over the values. We don't levy to a rate. Give you a little bit of history on that tax rate and what that looks like. So 9 out of the last 10 years, we've dropped from $11.84 to the projected $7.76. This year, a little over 4% reduction on that rate, but I do anticipate it'll be higher. I believe our property values will grow at a faster rate than that. Dating all the way back to 98, 99, so in 25 years, we've gone from almost $13 per thousand down to $7.76. Any questions? So tonight, the intent of this tonight is really to give you that introduction. You've got a lot of materials in front. I'm sure there's, as you now have the context to it, to be able to dive back into some of those materials that we distributed. Typically, the process here is to introduce it at the meeting, give you a couple of weeks to dive back into it. Now that you've got the narrative behind it, you have a couple of weeks to dive back into documentation. May 8th, we'll have this on the agenda for a preliminary approval. Again, we do this preliminary budget to get that spending authority for next year. So once the board adopts this, it gives us the ability to get some of the orders out and get things moving forward as a spending plan for next year. The original budget is adopted in October. 3 things have to happen yet, 4 things this year. The state has to finish the work on the biennial budget. We anticipate that will be done sometime over the summer. The third Friday count in September has to be held. That sets our revenue limit for the year. The certification of values that comes in the fall, the first week of October. And then finally, by October 15th, the certification of the equalization aid. So those 4 elements are all unknowns, but pretty significant when you think of the size of the pie that those impact. And we've got contingencies built into the budget to be able to react if there's anything that changes in what the assumptions are that we've made. So if you have any questions, you can send us between now and May 8th, and this will be on for preliminary adoption on the May 8th agenda.
When does the legislator usually approve the budget?
It's been as late as October 10th. I've seen it. It's been as early June. So I believe in meeting with our legislators, the plan right now is that education will be addressed through their caucuses in early June. So I think the intent, just like 2 years ago, was to have a budget to the governor before the end of June, before the start of the fiscal year, to be able to act on.
And based on our meetings with Senator Kapinga and Representative Nalen, we heard that education, what they do is that I think they hit smaller chunks of the budget first in terms of their planning. And I think Adam indicated education will probably be last in terms of what they address as a proposal, but then it comes out as the legislative budget. Senator Kapinga had indicated in June, he fully anticipated having that to the governor, and then what does the governor do with it? And so we'll have to see what happens at that point.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
I'd just like to, take the opportunity to compliment John on the work he does, ton of work, and then, of course, you have department heads that contributed to writing this piece, but, the planning and just really having a good estimate to work with so that we can feel like we're, in a position where we can respond depending on what those, you're working with unknowns, but being in a really strategic position so that we can be responsive based on what comes out of Madison is really critical for us.
Maybe just one quick comment, John. I mean, I think the fact that if we can potentially avoid that short-term borrowing, I mean, that's a huge cost savings for the district. I mean, those are things that we just need to kind of probably keep in front of us, because as we look at ways that we can save money for the taxpayers in Pewaukee, that's one of the ways we can do it. I mean, if we have the reserves built up to the point that we can avoid that, I don't know what the actual dollar savings would be, but again, it's another way that you and your team have helped us kind of be sustainable for the future too. So, and the reduction in our health insurance costs, I mean, that's a big factor too, so.
Yeah, that goes back to those principles of sustainability and predictability and spendability. So as we look at what is coming out from the legislature in that, and then how we channel those resources, one of the main goals of the facilities and operations pillar of the strategic plan has always been, how can we become more efficient, more lean in the operation so that that money, the resources that we do have, can be invested back in the classroom and opportunities. So keeping that focus.
Okay. Want to go on to champions?
Okay. In your packet, you have a proposal for an amendment to the contract with Champions, the daycare provider in the district. This process began in 2019 and was put to a quick halt with COVID when it came through. So we brought it back to the forefront. The goal in having the daycare provider on campus here was to provide a high-quality experience that coordinates well with our buildings and what's happening in the instructional program. And Champions provides a high-quality experience that does not always come at the lowest cost. Recognizing some of the challenges that some of our families are having within the district, we incorporated that conversation with them on an amendment to this contract, where they have now will be instituting a scholarship program for any family that applies. We'll go through the process with them. They want to do it like a finding activity where somebody may be eligible for participation in a state-supported or federal-supported program, but also then to provide some relief where they can qualify for a scholarship that would reduce the cost to those families. The second element that's in the amendment that you'll be acting on, within the statute, we're really restricted on the fees that can be charged for before and after school programming. And it's tied to the incremental cost. So depreciation doesn't count. If you clean a cafeteria after lunch every day, which we do with our staff, that's not a cost that can be attributed. Champions does a nice job of maintaining the facilities and cleaning up after themselves, putting things away so we don't incur additional costs there. But they did agree, cost of utilities, cost of cooling, those kind of things have gone up to a point where we would double that cost on a daily basis for the daily rate, of which then they reimburse us at the end of each month.
Maybe one comment, you reference it as daycare, but it's really before school, after school programming that's provided. And it's there to support families and parents who have work schedules that allow them to drop off their kids before school or pick them up after school, right?
Yeah, the statutory reference is before and after school programming. This is expanded in 2018 when we added the wraparound care to support our 4K programming because it was a barrier to some families participating in the 4K program for some students who could very much use it. So we expanded it instead of just the before and after hours to wrapping around the AM and PM 4K classes. And it's been full with a wait list ever since then.
And I will say, Champions has been a good partner. They've been very responsive. We talked to them a little bit about cost this year because we'd heard a little bit about them making sure that they were competitively priced. And they were, I thought, appropriately responsive to that and did some things to, including in this proposal, to have more scholarship opportunities and bringing some costs down. But we really don't have any, I mean, we just never have an issue. They just run things well. And we hear good things. I hear from other districts that use other providers, and there are sometimes real challenges. And so they've been a real good partner.
Okay, do I have a motion? Yes, please.
Move to approve the amendment number 1 to the Champions Daycare contract as presented.
Second. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to personnel issues.
Yeah, we have one resignation tonight. Nicole Dirksey, halftime journalism and English teacher. As resignation, I would seek your approval.
All right. I have a motion.
Move to approve the resignation of Nicole Dirksey.
Second?
All in favor of approving the resignation of Nicole Dirksey, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And then next, a couple of hiring items. I'll give you a little bit of context here. Jay Posick, for a .2, so 20% Dean of Students position at Asa Clark. This is really kind of a job, in essence, a job share. Katie Spadoni, Associate Principal at Asa, had her second child and was really looking to, came to us with, see if there's any options for a little work-life balance and be able to spend a little bit more time home with her young children. Just so happens that Jay was her FMLA coverage when she was out earlier. He did a great job. He's very experienced. He's really good with kids and behaviors, which is what he'd be focused on. So he's kind of a unicorn, and which in this case, he's also, interestingly enough, he's also just subs in the district because he retired as a principal. Kind of call him the Swiss Army knife. He does pretty much you name it. He's done the role in the district, but his willingness to do it, his connection to the district, his experience is really kind of a nice fit to be able to offer this opportunity to Katie. She's certainly someone we think very highly of and want to keep around as a bright young leader with huge future potential. So I take any question, they'll work flexibly with each other if they need to tweak it at all, but that's the plan, yeah.
Anybody
Move to
else?
approve the hiring of Jay Posick.
Second.
All in favor of the hiring of Jay Posick, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And on to France here. Christopher Kent, we have a part of staffing for next year. We have a good problem in French in that it's growing as a program. We have very good teachers at Asa Clark and at the high school, and the interest among students has increased. Needing us to hire a part-time French teacher, that's not easy to do. French teachers are hard to find in the first place, and then part-time. Christopher happens to be a parent in the district with strong background and love for the language. This will be an alternative kind of licensing approach for him. He's not currently certified, but that's something that Colin's working through with him through alternative licensure opportunities. And we're confident that that's all going to work out well for him to be in that role for next year. So
I loved his resume. It was a great resume.
yeah, very interesting resume, great real-world experiences he'll be able to bring into this position.
So we currently have two, right? Are they two full-time?
Yes.
We're gonna go to 2.5. Wow. Okay.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the hiring of
Christopher Kent.
Christopher Kent.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the hiring of Christopher Kent, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And we do not have any leave requests.
So I minored in French and haven't used it since I left college. I need to be friends with these people and they need to teach me how to speak French again. That's my goal. All right. Okay, moving on to board goals and operations. We have review of upcoming activities. So we're heading into our busy season, peeps. Okay, so Wednesday, we have our honors banquet, which many of us are able to go to, which is awesome. Thank you for that. Monday, May 8th, we'll have business affairs in the board meeting. And is that the month that we're gonna add policy, or is that June?
June.
June, okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then Monday, May 15th, we have the Community Strategic Planning Session. So hopefully you all have taken some time to look at the invitation list. I'm hoping that we can extend some personal invitations. If you want anybody added to it, we can give Julie some names, and she will do that. We had some really great response last year, and I think the personal touch really makes a difference. So I hope that everybody can chip in and help in that process. Monday, May 22nd, we have our second May board meeting, and then Wednesday, June 7th is the Asa Clark Middle School promotion on the football field. And then the following Friday, June 9th, is the high school graduation ceremony in the gym. So if you can attend either one or both of those, please let Julie know. And then we'll have our June board meeting on the 12th, and that's the one where we're adding policy at 6 with business affairs, and then we'll have the board meeting at 7. Anybody have any questions or comments?
The May 5th event.
Oh,
Good.
yes, thank you, Larry. So, May 5th, we do have an event at the football stadium with retiring Derek and TJ Watts jerseys. That is at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. So, it's not ticketed or anything like that, it's just
Should be.
open.
Start
There you go.
raising some funds for
Right.
that.
Start raising some funds.
Maybe we can get them to sign some autographs for
There
money.
you go. Start giving us a
Or
little
they could make an appearance at the Asa Clark Middle School dance.
There you go.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Hey, guys, we're retired New Jersey, but we have a few jobs for you to do.
Walk
You're
around
welcome.
dance.
Thank you.
Like the line up, you know, like
Yeah.
the dollar dance. and-
Yeah.
We will become their worst
I'm sure
nightmare.
they'd be.
Like, you know
I
what,
love
just
that.
keep the jersey.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh.
Will we have to build a bigger display cabinet down there?
We may have to add to, we have wall space down there. We may have to.
Might have to rearrange a little.
All right.
One other quick question on that one. So I thought at one point in time, we had JJ was supposed to be the citizen or the
The year.
alumni of the year.
We had named him Alumni of the Year, but we just could not. That was after we really supported his huge hurricane relief effort.
Right.
And we just couldn't
Coordinate
get
time.
him here.
Could we tag that along or not, or is it just,
I'm not prepared to do that by May 5th.
but potentially all three of them
Yeah.
will be here on campus?
I believe all three, I haven't heard for sure on JJ. I think all three will be here. I mean, obviously the two will be here.
I would hope.
I would think JJ will be here.
And on Wednesday night, there will be the Grandpa Watt Scholarship is part of the,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and along those lines of the honors banquet, I just want to thank this board. You know, I think it was 6 scholarships that were funded from donations of members of this board. So that's sends a heck of a great message to the community. So for those of you who contributed, really appreciate your support and generosity.
All right. Moving on, we have the CISA delegate appointment. So I'm going to throw it to Larry and Mike.
I'll try to give you a brief overview of what CISA is. I've served on the board now for, I guess, maybe a couple of years, and it's by school district, so it's not about me personally. There's a slot there that belongs to the Pewaukee School District. So I was elected to fill a term or do a term in terms of with that. So I passed out at your seats, there's a little bit of a brief description of it. And I believe, Mike, I mean, CISAs are all over the country essentially, so that it's not just Wisconsin, but it was something that was created by the Wisconsin State Statutes in 1983. The top page has all of the different CISAs. There's 12 different regions around the state that are part of the CISA organizations in the state. Each one of them do slightly different things. I think in terms of the CISA 1, we are kind of known for our Institute for Personalized Learning and do some great work in that area, and work in the sense that they also do have worked with other school districts in the state of Wisconsin, but they also work with some districts outside of the state of Wisconsin. So it's kind of like they take and do that. So their funding, at least my understanding of it, mostly comes either from what districts purchase in terms of services, and Mike's going to talk about that in a little bit, but also anything that they get in terms of some grants or grant funding that help support school districts. So they get some of their funding through DPI and other sources of funding that are out there. So within CISA 1, the second page down has a little bit more description. It is 45 member districts going all the way from Kenosha up to Port Washington, right, John? I think so. It covers a pretty, pretty wide area, and then all the way out like to Oconomowoc and the places out there as well. Over 3,000 or 300,000 students and 175 staff. Now, this is maybe a little bit outdated, but also the programs and services. It's governed by this 11-member board of control. And again, there's different regions within the CISA 1, so it's by a regional kind of vote that's there for the different parts of the CISA 1 school district regions that are there. The districts like the Arrowhead and their feeder districts, they typically get one position, if you will, or one representative. So at the meeting, when we have our annual convention, those districts get together and then decide who's going to be the spokesperson or the voter for those union school districts, right? Is that the term for it? So.
Yes.
But yeah, they have to decide that as part of the meeting. So that's just structure that goes along with it. They do talk about being some of the largest and the smallest school districts that are out there. Their vision is to be a regional catalyst that enables clients. Their mission is to provide high-quality, cost-effective programs and services that are responsive to the dynamic needs of their members and clients. So one of the things that we do as the Board of Control is that they put together kind of a catalog of services, and so there's a whole menu you get to select from, and I'll have Mike talk a little bit about some of that. When they talk about some of their core strategies, again, they have to sell these services to school districts. It's not like it's a guaranteed source of funding. They get funded based on what comes in and what programs school districts provide. So they help, I think, build some of the capacity. They provide some teacher things. I don't know, when she talked about the SRO tonight, are they doing that through the CISA, or is that a separate
CISA
group?
does have an SRO network, but this is one they just kind of.
They just created on their own in terms of what, but yeah, those are the things that are out there. Mike also participated in the one page where it said the Professional Advisory Committee. So when I first heard that, I thought it was the abbreviation was the PAC. It's like, what is a PAC in terms of for a CISA? But it's their Professional Advisory Committee, not a political action.
Yeah, no, definitely not a political action.
No, it was a professional.
And those are in the PAC, the Professional Advisory Committee it's for superintendents, and it's actually in statute as something that they.
And you were the chair of that, like, either last year or 2 years ago?
I was the chair I got to do double duty because of we had one superintendent going to leave the area, and so then I ended up having to do it 2 years, and then I got to do it all through the COVID. So a lot of FaceTime. Actually, that's by far our highest attendance at meetings was over that because it was all virtual. So we'd have, like 30 people there. Now we get like half.
But again, that's the group that kind of helps advise them in terms of the programs that are there. Other things, the quality programs, grow and leverage strategic advantages, and design and advance innovation practices and things like that. So again, the Institute for Personalized Learning, they're going to be working, I believe, very, very, very closely with districts in terms of the AI concept. So just as Danielle and folks have found it in terms of education, this was for my conference last week. It's AI in health, a leader's guide to winning in the new age of intelligent health systems. So it's hitting a lot of different industries out there as well. So with that, I think I want to just have maybe Mike give a little bit of a profile in terms of what we use here in Pewaukee. We are not the largest purchaser of services in terms of within the CISA. Actually, we're probably maybe more on the smaller side in terms of what's there. But Mike can talk a little bit about some of those services.
Yeah, and you approve a contract with them annually. I even feel like it's at the next meeting. I think that's what we just got. So, and you'll have Tony Stranke here because the majority of the services we purchase are really related to student services, special education. John talked about purchase services before, about where it's more cost effective sometimes to get things from a provider such as that versus trying to hire someone internally. So, occupational therapists, for example, that's something that we might contract through CISA. And then there's so there's a number of special ed supports. They are actually, Learning Center West is an alternative placement site that they run that's actually new, that's right by their building, and also by Insight. We have a number of students placed there, is through CISA. Talked about PAC, Danielle's, meeting, why am I blanking on the name of it?
SIS and the DAC
Yeah,
networks.
yeah,
So
but-
the district assessment coordinators, and then SIS is our regional CNI folks. So
Yep.
I'm part of those networks. We work closely with the Institute for Personalized Learning. We're a
Yep.
member of them. We're a host district for them. I'm presenting at their conference in June, so we're always kind of a part of that as well.
Yep, yep. So it's those kind of services and that we get from them, so they're an important partner and resource.
I mean, from what I've kind of gathered, I mean, I think the districts that are active participants within the group, I mean, there's a lot of interaction there and a lot of mutual work and sharing of information, which is, I think, the whole purpose of it. I mean, that they have the regions, but they do share across the state as well in terms of the programming and services that wherever they can, so. But I think the niche for CISA one is really a lot of the personalized learning and other activities going on with innovation type stuff, so. We just, well, actually, the only thing, probably the biggest news there, a new executive director was hired within the last year. It's Sue Doyle. And so she's there and is working very well. But Gabe Colasari, who's from the Hamilton School District in Sussex, I think was the chair of that group for over 30 years or so. So he was an active participant in the CISA Board of Control for a really long time. He was on the CISA, or on this Hamilton School District Board about 34, 35 years, and then the CISA Board of Control for about 32. So he just stepped down this spring, so transition in leadership there, so, but that's okay.
So you are our delegate.
I'm a delegate to this annual convention, okay, but I also hold, or the Pewaukee School District holds a seat that's there. So we have to
Oh.
appoint me as a delegate to the
Gotcha.
assembly, different than the Board of Control, so.
Because then the delegates elect the Board of Control.
Correct.
Yeah. Right, so you really need, in essence, an action to appoint, if it's your choice, to appoint Larry.
Does anyone want to fight Larry for this job? Just checking. Larry, we greatly appreciate you.
Yeah, May 16th, 5:30 to 8:30, so it doesn't overlap with our strategic planning session on the 15th, so will work.
Okay. So I'm guessing we can have a motion, someone, please?
I make a motion to appoint Larry to serve as representative for the Pewaukee School District at the May 16th Board of Control Annual Convention.
Second.
All in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, again, thank you, Larry, we appreciate that. Okay, legislative updates.
Yeah, we've mentioned that and I really feel good about the work that we've done, the opportunity we've had to meet with our legislators. Thanks, Stacy, for helping us use her connections a little bit to connect us with Senator Kapinger. We hadn't been able to connect with him in a little while, so that was great. And Representative Nayland, we met with him again. That's the second time this year we met with him on Friday, right? Just on Friday. And thanks, Stacy and Danielle and John for being part of that meeting, just to really talk about our priorities and on behalf of the district. The topics that we addressed included some of what you heard tonight with the budget, fiscal cliff and funding needs, and tried to share local context in terms of what the impact has been on us with inflation and revenues and those things. And quite a bit of what you saw tonight was shared with them. We talked about things like voucher schools. It's certainly a priority of the Republican caucus to try to, to continue to expand vouchers. That's just a platform that they support. What we asked was just that the comparisons of costs that are more apples to apples. You'll see some advocacy that tries to point to per pupil expenditures of public schools, and then that should drive what voucher schools are the rate that they're funded, but they don't have requirements for providing transportation, so you really need to remove those costs. Some provide special ed services, many do not, and if they do, unlike public K-12, they get reimbursed up to 90%. We are asking, our public K-12, saying we, public K-12's advocacy is trying to get to 60, we're currently at about 30%. So it's very different, and so really the actual, when you look at an apples to apples comparison, it's a few $100s apart, not thousands of dollars apart. So that's something that we talked about, just bringing that to their attention. And then we had great conversations about our concerns related to any possible mandates relating to reading instruction. We shared our data demonstrating the strong performance that we have. There's some science of reading talking points out there in some states that have moved to have requirements around that. And in essence, our message was we don't want to have mandates that require us, limit our ability to select our own resources. We want local control. We're a district that is among the best performers in the state. And so we think we've earned the right to continue to make our own local decisions, for you as a board to make local decisions about those things. And both Representative Nalen and Senator Kepica were very supportive of that. So in our conversations, was there anything else or Stacy, that we really addressed? So those are the topics we really tried to hit. They're both generous with their time. Those were good meetings. I intend to send a note also to Governor Evers around some of these things, in particular with the reading piece, and State Superintendent Underly about those things. So other than that, it's all really, the listening sessions and waiting for the legislature to produce a biennium budget proposal. That'll be the next big thing.
Okay. Strategic planning, I kind of gave my spiel already, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. So strategic planning, looking forward to that coming up on May 15th. Yes, I'd echo what Stacy said. I think one of the reasons why last year really felt like that was one of the strongest ones we had is because we had such great turnout. So if you have influence with folks to get some people out, we're going to continue to invite and to promote through social media and those things to try to get the community to turn out for that event. You probably heard me mention it several times with the people that were in attendance at the facility planning to encourage them to come back for that as well. So, but some notes in here, invitations are being sent out this week. And Julie has provided you with that spreadsheet of who will be invited. So as Stacy said, if you have other people that you want added to the list to make sure they get an invite or that you want to reach out to, please let us know. We can add that to the list. All staff will be invited. We've already secured some students from middle and high school that'll be participants. I think it's always really helpful to have the student voice there, and we'll continue to update you as people RSVP. The format is intended to be very similar to what it was last year. I thought that was effective. If you have ideas, suggestions, please let us know. I intend to try to fold in some of what we covered with facility planning. That was kind of intentional to have the facility planning event in advance of strategic planning, so we can bring that in a little bit more intentionally into that evening as well. So again, that'll be we'll have some food, we'll have upfront presentation, most likely in the auditorium, and then get into our breakout groups like we did last year and work on getting that feedback across those 6 strategy areas that are in the plan. So again, if you have questions or thoughts, let me know, but things are in motion for May 15th.
Have we ever offered childcare?
I think there's been times where we've tried to get some high school kids to offer some of that. The issue is really if people want infants cared for, and that gets a little hairy. And we really haven't heard a lot of demands for it.
All right, and then, anybody have anything else on that, or questions or anything? And then the debriefing on the long-range planning, I thought those were really great comments.
Yeah, just looking if there's any, I thought it, always would have liked to have even, have some more people. We had 30, I think it's in here, 35 total people attend. I thought there were good conversations.
I thought my group was great.
Yeah. It was good feedback on the different facilities, got some items definitely on the board to talk about in a sense of some priorities for the people that were there.
Ended up with a very diverse group of people too, so we got lots of different viewpoints.
Yeah, that was good.
I agree, Jeannie.
Any other thoughts or feedback on the facility planning?
Very intrigued by the comment about advisors. I probably need to educate myself a little bit better on how that all works.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's why it's always good to do an exit ticket thing,
Yeah.
because things that might not come up in those group discussions, and again, some people, they might be in a group where some people tend to dominate discussion and they don't feel like they can get their word in edgewise, or they might be a little intimidated, that's why it's nice. And then you sometimes can mine out comments that they may not be directly related, but it still might be something that we can use for improvement.
All right, pretty sure we're not gonna have any comments from citizens. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.